The only way that I can use every day and not hide it all the time was to move away from my family, because I was just hiding it. It was just me and my older brother and sister who are mute. They're handicapped. So it was just us three growing up. You know, I remember back at the age of 8 is when things started to change and our home became a broken home. And it was just my mom and us 3 kids. Like, the family stuff just started to fade away. We started to move out of our house that I grew up in. My mom was going out to dances and parties, and we would just stay home for days. I had to make sure that they ate and they were taken care of. So I didn't have much of a childhood because of that. You know, there was times I was pulled out of school just to babysit. I used to like school at first. You know, I got good grades, got on the honor roll and stuff like that. You know, I wasn't pushed to go to school. I just lost that interest. My dad, he was around, but we would only see him on the weekends. He had got out of prison and he was back in me and my brother's life. So he let me move in with him. I moved away from my mother and my brothers and sisters, and I went and lived with my dad. It was in a different town, so I didn't know anybody, and I didn't really know how to meet friends. I had interest in smoking marijuana, you know, because I've always seen it growing up. I've seen it in, you know, my family, on my mother's side of the family. You know, I pretty much liked it, and I just continued on with that. You know, and it just became this big old pothead. When I was introduced to meth, I remember I was at a desert party. And then after that, I was pretty much hooked. Once I quit my job, that's when I realized like who my real friends were, because, you know, they were basically around just for the drugs. And once I knew this, I was devastated, and I believe that was the first time I experienced depression. During this time, I got arrested. I had to go to court, facing charges. I even went to county jail. I never thought to myself, well, I should stop. You know, this is gonna lead to something else. I remember a time where my dad sat down with me after I got arrested one time because he had to pick me up at the police station. He was telling me, I need to watch out who I hang around with. You know, I should stick with family because family's always gonna be there. You know, friends come and go. My brothers and sisters, they were taken away from my mother and they lived with my grandparents for the duration of their childhood all the way up into high school. At that time, I didn't understand that she was in her addiction. It took a while after for me to realize that. And I was basically the only one that had the drug problem. Had a time where it was just thought it was bad luck. Why can't things go right for me? You know, my morals started to change. So eventually all that landed me in prison for the first time. The charge that I was given was the theft of means by credit card, because I was working for this courier service and I found a way to use it without them knowing. I had a warrant for my arrest because of this. They had pressed charges against me. I ended up in county jail for about 30 days or so because of this charge. I used all the way up until I went to my sentencing date. You know, I was just replacing one addiction for another because my drinking got out of control. I started getting back onto like hookup sites and apps, and I felt a bump behind my ear. I went to the doctor to go get it checked out, and the doctor had told me it was a lymph node. Gave me antibiotics and just told me to follow up with them. So I was curious about what caused lymph nodes, so I looked it up online, and I remember scrolling all the way down to the end, and it talked about HIV. I remember going back for my results, and they told me that I was positive. You know, I just remember crying, and my stigma at the time was, like, you get HIV and AIDS, that you're pretty much gonna die. You know, I didn't want to go see the doctor. I didn't want to take any meds. The only coping skill that I had was using meth, you know, using drugs and drinking. That's all I knew. I shared this information, my diagnosis, with my parents and my brothers and sisters. So it took my stepmom filling out paperwork for me, you know, making phone calls and telling me what I needed to get done. And she was giving me reminders when I had to take my pill, because I had to take a pill once a day. Because if not, I wouldn't have done anything. So the only way that I can use every day and not hide it all the time was to move away from my family, because I was just hiding it from them. And it was pretty obvious, my drinking. Basically stopped caring about going and seeing the doctors and getting lab work and checkups and taking my medication. But I was more open about my addiction. I had that willingness to be more open about my addiction. But I knew I had to apply honesty in all areas of my life. So I was really beating myself up, like, how did I get myself back into prison? Why did I get back into using? But once I got to prison, I got to the first yard, and my bunkie, had told me, hey, there's a AA meeting tonight, you wanna go? And I was shocked, so I plugged into that right away. I was like, yeah, let's go. I stuck with it, and they had a great fellowship in there. There was this great support group, and it was amazing. So I stayed clean in prison. I went into prison clean. I stayed clean in prison, and I got out clean. Prison, there's a lot of drugs. I would be walking down the dorm, and people would be just using drugs right there, people with a needle and a spoon. I completed my steps when I was in prison. I just gained recovery, and I was able to reach out to other people and help them in their recovery. So I had all these changes in life. It took a bit for me to get the courage to share my story, especially the part about having HIV, because I knew if I was going to speak about my story, I would have to be honest and share everything. When I was going through my addiction, I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know who to reach out to. So I knew by sharing my story would help someone like me who's needing that support, who's needing that help. And I found, because I shared that, I found people that I could relate to, that are living with the same things that I'm living with. I have the courage now where I want to share my story and get it out. So I love life. I accept that I'm an addict. I'm always going to be an addict. I gotta be vigilant in my recovery. I am gonna live. I'm not gonna die. All I gotta do is take a pill. Life is good. Recovery is amazing, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Detox to Rehab wants to help as many people as possible, and do it the right way. Please subscribe, comment, and like our channel. Thank you for watching.